Okay, the last question. This would be on paper 2 in the real exam. It's section A and it's the urban section. Okay, so we've got all of this information. Now before you read it, read the questions. So the first question is just about completing the graph. We've got to use this information to complete the graph. So we know that the estimated population is 4.8 in 2025, so go up, mark on 4.8, and in 2030 mark on 5 billion. So you had 1 mark for properly marking on the points, and then the next mark was for your line, so you must join it up to their line and you must exactly go through the points. So that was your second mark there. Okay, how many people lived in urban areas in 2000? Find 2000, up you go, and go across, and we can see that it is 2.8. You didn't get the mark unless you wrote billion. Okay. So the next question, suggest why. So we've got an explain question. An increasing number of megacities, so cities over 10 million, are located in lower income countries or in NEEs, newly emerging economies like China and India. Okay, so our main reason here is rural to urban migration. Okay, so that would be worth 1 mark, but we've got 2 marks for this question, so we've got to develop this point. Why are people moving? Because of jobs, because of the increasing economy in the cities, the growing economy in the cities. You could talk about opportunities in the cities, such as education, for example, universities. Right, the next question was the question about Glasgow. So for that one you had an extra map insert. In the real exam the map would be clear enough to read. So we've got to give a 4-figure grid reference for the Scottish Exhibition and Conference Centre on the north bank of the Clyde. So it says 4, so make sure you do 4 and not 6. Look for the Clyde, the north bank is obviously that side, and we can see it's there. So the square that this is in is this one. Now, how can you be sure you've got the right 2 lines? Well, you look for the L, that's the L there, so it's those 2 lines. The bottom one comes first along the corridor, 56, and then up the stairs until you see 65. So the answer was 56, 65, no commas, no brackets. Okay, what is the straight line distance to the nearest kilometre? So they just want a whole kilometre of this, from Ibrox to Calvin Hall. Well, you have to use the grid references to find this. So Ibrox is here and Calvin Hall is here. So then you need to grab your rough piece of paper, lie it on the map, middle of Ibrox to the middle of Calvin Hall, mark it off on your map, on your piece of paper, sorry, go down to the scale, and we can see that the nearest kilometre is 2. So if we look over at the map, over at the choices, we've got 2 kilometres, so the right answer was A. Okay, using map evidence, it suggests how an express bus service on the A814 would reduce traffic congestion in Glasgow city centre. So this is the A814, this is the city centre here. So how would having an express, so a really fast bus going that way, reduce traffic congestion? Well, the obvious answer is that more people would use the bus, which would mean fewer people were in their cars. Now that would get you 1 mark. So you've got to say why fewer people would use their cars, but they would use the bus. So it could be that they wouldn't need to bother with finding parking. It could be that it was less stressful for them. It could be that it was quicker than going in their car. So that's what you need for your second mark. Okay, so we've got another bit of reading on this one. so we've got to look at study figure 3, which is this, describes part of the central government action plan, which was all about improving conditions in this area of Glasgow. So the area is shown on the Ordnance Survey map. So we've got to look at it. Now it's an urban regeneration project, so we know about these from Bristol. So looking at what they did, well, what did they do? They put in some new hospitals, some new homes, rundown housing areas were improved. They restored some nice buildings, put a nice museum in, improved shopping, improved recreation, and the derelict areas were improved. So the question says, using figure 3 and your own knowledge. Now, if you just use figure 3, you won't get level 3. If you just use your own knowledge, again, you won't get level 3. You've got to use both to get the top marks. Okay, so we've got to explain how urban regeneration projects reduce levels of urban deprivation. This is our focus here, reducing the urban deprivation. So we've got to link each answer, each statement, back to reducing the urban deprivation. So we could look at the new homes, okay, as point 1, but we need to say why that reduces deprivation. Well, formerly they were run down, so perhaps they had no central heating, perhaps they had no insulation, perhaps they had single glazing in the windows. Okay, so how did that reduce deprivation? Well, if people had quality shelter, then their living conditions are improved, which means that they have a better quality of life, their houses are warm, and it increases their healthiness and therefore their life expectancy. You could make a point that they're spending less money on their fuel because the houses are properly insulated, therefore people have more money to spend on quality food or on education, things like music lessons for their children. Okay, so that sort of thing is using your own knowledge, but we could also here bring in about Bristol and how in Bristol they have also had a regeneration project that improved quality of life. So we might talk about the harbour side that formerly was the tobacco and warehouses on the river, and now they have been changed. The derelict land has been changed into cultural and leisure facilities. You could here link that up to the same thing that they did in Glasgow. You could give the example of at Bristol if you wanted, or the aquarium that we went to. Why has that improved people's quality of life? Well, we've got more visitors, which means that we've got more jobs. We've got more money coming into the area. That money can be used by the government to improve schools, hospitals and roads so that people's quality of life is improved, and more jobs means that people have more money, okay, so they can buy better food, better quality food, which improves their life. They might spend more money on their children, things like music lessons. That means that people's quality of life improves, their job prospects improve, and so on. Okay, so to get your 6 marks here, it was important to link it back to reducing urban deprivation. If you just talked about your urban regeneration projects and why you thought they were good, that wasn't enough. You had to link it back to urban deprivation. Deprivation means going without, so you could be deprived in terms of your housing, your food, your access to education, your income, and so on. Okay. Next question, sustainable urban living. So we looked at Freiburg when we looked at sustainable urban living. Here's another really good example of something that happened in Leeds. Another urban regeneration scheme. It tells us it was carbon zero, so didn't produce any more greenhouse gases, produces more energy than it uses, eco homes, so presumably solar panels and so on, and some nice communal landscape grounds. It talks about lots of different things here. The renewable energy, we could probably solar, but oh no, actually we can see, look, we've got wind power. Okay, you've got the cycle links, you've got the car sharing, you've got recycling, you've got shops and cafes, things for people to do. Local people have a medical centre and a nursery, the children's playgrounds, the parks, the outdoor centres, sports, swimming pools, and allotments. We've got loads there to talk about. And of course we can also talk about Freiburg. So let's have a look at the question. Again, we've got using the figure and your own knowledge. If you don't pay attention to the and there, you won't get up to level 3. So you've got to say, discuss how the features of that development will make for more sustainable urban living. Okay, so we might here not want to actually talk about Freiburg, we might just concentrate on the greenhouse development in Leeds. So we know that we're talking about sustainability here, so we always have to talk about social, economic and environmental. So we might make 3 points. Socially, okay, why was the scheme good? Well, perhaps on this one we could talk about all the opportunities for children. So we could talk about the parks, the swimming pool and the nursery, so that children have more to do, less likely to be involved in crime, better start in life, healthier lives, leading to more opportunities in the future. Okay, economically, we might talk about perhaps the car sharing and how that can reduce costs to people. And environmentally, we could talk about the communally landscaped grounds, we could talk about the allotments, okay, so that we improve the local environment, it's greener. Or we could also, of course, talk about alternatively talk about the renewable energy. So there's less CO2 being produced, which reduces global warming. So by covering the 3 areas, you're going to end up with 6 marks. How are you showing your own knowledge? Well, that's this bit, okay, or these bits. It's your interpretation. That's your own knowledge in this answer. Okay. Last question, 9 marks plus 3 SPAG marks. Evaluate the effectiveness of an urban planning strategy to help improve the quality of life for the urban poor. So here you need to know which example to use, and for this one it's Rio, the Rocinha favela, and we're looking at the favela Bairro scheme. Okay, so we've got to do our command word focus content structure. Our command word is evaluate, so immediately we know what structure we're going to use on one hand and on the other. What's our focus? Improving the quality of life. Okay, and what's our content? Well, it's going to be about the favela Barrio. Remember that you won't get 9 marks unless you talk about a real place and a real scheme. Okay, so on one hand, the favela Barrio scheme improved the quality of life. So now we've got to give an example of how it did that. Well, they put in that cable car and they gave people a free return ticket every day. How did that improve their evidence? How did that explain? How did that improve their quality of life? Well, we've got to explain that now. Well, it meant that they could get to work in the city, so there were more job opportunities. It took less time to get to work, or to university or secondary school, so that people were more likely to be in school. and had more time to get to work on time or to do other things with their time. Perhaps gardening or learning a new skill. So that's on one hand, and we could also there talk about improving housing. They had 100% mortgages so that everyone could afford to buy their own home, and they also had access to credit so that they could borrow money to improve their own home. So that was how they would improve their lives. But here we could add in a but, and we know that if we put in complexity, then we're going to be pushing ourselves towards 9 marks rather than 7 or 8. What's the problem with this is that people lacked the skills to build quality houses, quality homes. Okay, so there was, although it was good, it did improve quality of life, it wasn't perfect because of that fact. So now we've got to do, on the other hand, some of the initiatives were not maintained. And some were not well designed or well thought about. So our example there, our evidence, is the roads and the water supply. So the roads aim to be tarmacked, but because they didn't keep on investing and improving them, so after the rains, the roads became unusable and full of potholes. And the water supply, they aim to stop people, they aim to provide taps and standpipes so that people no longer had to walk and get their water from caiman infested rivers, which were also dirty. But what happened is that these broke and they weren't maintained, and so they became useless. People then had to go back to walking to get their water from the caiman infested rivers. Okay, so have we managed to get our 9 marks there up to level 3? Well, we have to put in our starter sentence, our intro sentence. So we have to say it improved, or the Favela Barrio scheme improved quality of life for the urban poor, and I would say to some extent. There were some good things and some bad things. So level 1, 1 to 3, level 2, 4 to 6, level 3, 7 to 9. So have we managed to get our level 3? Well, we've evaluated, we've had to some extent, we've done one hand, and on the other hand we've got a nice balanced answer. We've used real place information about the cable car and about the improving housing with the 100% mortgages. We've talked about what they did to the roads and what they did to the water supply. Have we explained ourselves? We've explained why this improved quality of life. We've explained here as well why that improved quality of life. And here we've shown how some of the problems. We've probably got a 9 because we've added a however or a but to show a level of complexity. Okay, that's it. Well done.